Kia ora mai tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Members, we are debating the Support for Children and Hardship Bill. When we adjourned for the dinner break, Stuart Nash had 4 minutes and 45 seconds remaining, obviously cut short prior to dinner, and he's welcome to resume his call.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I think I will resume that
Stuart
call.
Nash.
Thank you very much. I was sort of cut off in mid-flow in 15 seconds into my speech. Mr Speaker, what I was talking about is the title and commencement of the bill called the Support for Children and Hardship Bill. And the point I was making, Mr Speaker, is the commencement date for this bill is April 2016. And after this bill, Mr Speaker, we are about to go to a tax bill, as we have done quite recently in this House. And there are a number of clauses in that tax legislation which are retrospective. And it seems a little odd to me, Mr Chair, that when we have bills that take money off people or change tax laws, which are quite fundamental to our economy, often they're retrospective. But, Mr Chair, when we're giving money back to people, and often the most disadvantaged, for some reason there is a big lag before this comes in. So, Mr Speaker, Mr Chair, what this bill does is actually giving $25 a week to some families come April 2016. Now, that's nothing. That's not to be sneezed at. $25. It will make a big difference to some families. But the interesting thing about this, Mr Chair, is it's not indexed to how many children a family has. So, if a family has one child, they'll get $25 a week. If a family has 6 children, that family will also get $25 a week. And that doesn't seem very equitable to me. And I'm unsure if that's an unintended consequence. I'm unsure if it's a cruel joke or what the intent behind that is. Because if it is an unintended consequence, Mr Chair, I expect us to be back in this House with another remedial bill within 6 months remedying that. Well, I hope we are. Now, Mr Chair, we are talking about children in hardship. Let's put some context to this. There are 305,000 children living in poverty at the moment, and I think we can transpose the word poverty for hardship because it's pretty much the same. But the interesting thing about this is 60% of these are beneficiary families, but 40% of these children come from families whose parents work. This is a new category called the working poor. And Mr Chair, we had a very interesting meal last Friday when we gathered a whole lot of former Labour MPs to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the election of the first Labour government. And it was interesting because on placemats we had a speech from the throne of Michael Joseph Savage. And what he said, Mr Chair, was the Labour government believes that every man, he did say man, but I'm sure he meant man and woman, earns enough money to support a family. And that principle is universal, and yet here we are, literally 80 years later, still fighting for the right for people to earn enough money to support a family. And the fact that we haven't progressed in 80 years' time, to me, is a real shame. In fact, Mr Chair, you could argue that by the end of that Labour government, men and women were earning enough money to support a family. And I think that was one of the major legacies of that first Labour government. But now here we are, back in the House, arguing for the fact that people need to be able to earn enough money to ensure that their children have every opportunity to reach their full potential. Mr Chair, every now and again, what we hear from people is that, these people, they earn too much money, they get too much money back from the government. The interesting thing about that is very, very rarely is that criticism heard by someone who has to live on these tax credits. Mr Chair, Parliament has deemed that people have to receive a certain amount of money to be able to live with dignity if they have children. It was passed and it's accepted, but we would argue that at this point in time, that is simply not enough money. $25 a week increase, it really doesn't go far at all, especially if you have more than one child. In fact, if you have a lot of children, it doesn't go anywhere, to be honest. But the interesting thing for me, Mr Chair, is, and we heard this from some people in the government benches, is sure, this should be enough to support a family, but what it's also got to be is enough to ensure that families can escape that poverty trap. That people need enough money in New Zealand to ensure that their children have every opportunity to be as good as they possibly can be. And the travesty of what is happening at the moment is a lot of our children actually aren't afforded that opportunity. And the thing is, Mr. Chair, that I would argue we need to do more to change, get society back to the conditions, to the principles espoused by that savage Labor government in that first speech from the throne. It was a fantastic speech and we need to get back there.
I call